The world watches with bated breath. The conflict in Ukraine grinds on, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace in our time. Amidst this backdrop of despair, a flicker of hope emerges. The United States and Russia, locked in a bitter geopolitical standoff, have returned to the negotiating table. The stakes could not be higher. The outcome of these talks holds the potential to shape the future of not only Ukraine, but the broader international order. The world yearns for peace. In a significant development, high-level delegations from the United States and Russia convened in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, on February 18, 2025. This marked the first face-to-face meeting between the two superpowers in 3 years, a testament to the gravity of the situation in Ukraine. The American delegation was led by President Trump himself, underscoring the importance the United States attaches to these talks. Accompanying him were key members of his foreign policy team, Secretary of State Rubio, National Security Advisor Waltz, and Special Envoy Witkoff. On the Russian side, Foreign Policy aide Ushakov led the delegation, which included Foreign Minister Lavrov, RDIF Director Dmitriev, Foreign Policy Deputy Head Balakin, and Embassy Minister Counselor Proskuryakov. While no immediate breakthroughs were announced, the very fact that both sides engaged in such lengthy discussions was seen as a positive sign. The world waits to see if this fragile dialogue can be nurtured into a lasting peace. The discussions in Riyadh delved into a complex web of interconnected issues, each one a potential stumbling block on the road to peace. At the heart of the matter lay the territorial integrity of Ukraine, a non-negotiable principle for Kyiv and its Western allies, yet one that Moscow seemed unwilling to concede. Security guarantees for Russia, a long-standing demand from the Kremlin, also featured prominently in the talks. Moscow insists on assurances that NATO will halt its eastward expansion, viewing the Western military alliance as an existential threat. The United States and its allies, however, are wary of making any concessions that could be seen as undermining NATO's core principles of collective defense. The question of EU involvement in any future peace settlement added another layer of complexity to the talks. Economic cooperation, a potential area of common ground, also found its way onto the agenda. Finding a way to ease these sanctions, perhaps in exchange for concrete steps by Russia to de-escalate the conflict, could provide a much-needed boost to the global economy and create goodwill for further negotiations. The aftermath of the Riyadh summit saw a flurry of diplomatic activity as both sides sought to manage expectations and frame the narrative surrounding the talks. The reactions from Washington and Moscow, while cautiously optimistic, revealed the deep mistrust that continues to plague U.S.-Russia relations. Speaking to reporters after the meeting, Secretary of State Rubio struck a cautiously optimistic tone. He emphasized the importance of dialogue and the need for both sides to understand each other's concerns. He highlighted the establishment of a consultative mechanism as a positive step, suggesting that it could provide a framework for ongoing discussions. The meeting in Riyadh was a constructive first step, and we will continue to engage with Russia in the coming weeks and months. Foreign Minister Lavrov, speaking to Russian state media, acknowledged the meeting's significance but stressed the need for the United States to understand Russia's position. We are open to dialogue, but it must be based on mutual respect and a recognition of our legitimate security interests, Lavrov said. Section 5. Trump's diplomatic tightrope, balancing pressure and persuasion. As the driving force behind the renewed dialogue with Russia, President Trump has staked his reputation on finding a peaceful resolution to the Ukraine crisis. His approach, characterized by a mix of strategic ambiguity and very firm words, has drawn both praise and criticism. On the one hand, Trump's willingness to engage directly with Putin, a departure from the more confrontational stance of his predecessors, has been welcomed by some as a necessary step towards de-escalation. His supporters argue that his unconventional approach, unburdened by diplomatic protocol, could be the key to unlocking a breakthrough. On the other hand, Trump's unpredictable nature and penchant for off-the-cuff remarks have fueled concerns that he might inadvertently make concessions that undermine Ukrainian sovereignty or Western interests. While the content of their alleged conversation remains unknown, the very fact that Trump would make such a claim publicly suggests that he sees personal diplomacy as a key element of his strategy. Section 6. Europe's Balancing Act, Security Concerns and Calls for Unity. The ongoing dialogue between Washington and Moscow has sent ripples of anxiety through European capitals, particularly those closest to the front lines of the conflict in Ukraine. While European leaders welcome the resumption of talks, they are acutely aware of the potential costs of any deal that comes at the expense of Ukrainian sovereignty or European security. French President Emmanuel Macron, a vocal advocate for European strategic autonomy, has emerged as a key player in the diplomatic efforts surrounding the Ukraine crisis. Macron's approach has been characterized by a delicate balancing act. On the one hand, he has sought to maintain a united front with the United States and other NATO allies, emphasizing the importance of transatlantic solidarity in the face of Russian aggression. On the other hand, he has also kept channels of communication open with Putin, believing that dialogue, however difficult, is the only way to prevent the conflict from spiraling further out of control. Section 7. A fractured continent, European divisions over Ukraine. The Ukraine crisis has exposed deep divisions within the European Union, highlighting the challenges of forging a cohesive foreign policy among 27 member states, with often divergent interests and priorities. While the EU has managed to present a united front in its condemnation of Russia's actions and its imposition of sanctions, cracks have begun to appear as the economic costs of the conflict mount, and the prospects for a swift resolution remain elusive. The issue of military support for Ukraine has proved particularly divisive. While some member states, such as Poland and the Baltic states, have been vocal in their calls for increased military assistance to Kyiv, others, such as Germany and Italy, have been more reluctant to escalate the conflict. These divisions reflect not only differing threat perceptions, but also historical sensitivities and economic considerations. The exclusion of several smaller EU member states from the initial talks in Paris has further fueled resentment and mistrust. Section 8. Zelensky's plea. A Ukrainian perspective on the negotiations. Amidst the flurry of diplomatic activity, it is easy to lose sight of the human cost of the conflict. For the people of Ukraine, caught in the crossfire of a geopolitical chess game, the stakes could not be higher. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has emerged as a powerful voice for his people, rallying international support for Ukraine's plight and urging the world not to forget the human toll of the conflict. He has welcomed the resumption of dialogue between the United States and Russia, but has also expressed concerns that any agreement reached without Ukraine's direct involvement would be unacceptable. No decisions about Ukraine can be made without Ukraine, Zelensky declared in a recent address to the United Nations. We are not a bargaining chip in someone else's geopolitical game. We are a sovereign nation, and our fate must be decided by our own people. Section 9. The uncertain path ahead. Challenges and opportunities for peace. The road to peace in Ukraine remains long and uncertain. The resumption of dialogue between the United States and Russia, while a positive development, is but a first step on what promises to be a long and arduous journey. The deep mistrust between the parties, the complex web of interconnected issues, and the ever-present risk of miscalculation all cast a long shadow over the prospects for a lasting settlement. The coming weeks and months will be crucial. If the fragile momentum created by the Riyadh summit is to be sustained, both sides will need to demonstrate a genuine commitment to dialogue and a willingness to compromise. Concrete steps to de-escalate the conflict, such as a ceasefire agreement or the withdrawal of troops from the front lines, would help to build trust and create a more conducive environment for negotiations. The international community has a vital role to play in supporting these efforts. By speaking with one voice and presenting a united front, the international community can help to ensure that the talks remain on track, and that the voices of all stakeholders, including the Ukrainian people, are heard.